Hey, welcome to the New Home Insights podcast by John Burns Real Estate Consulting. I'm Dean Worley, your host. Each episode, we're going to bring you some of the best minds in the housing business talking about some fascinating topics or trend or innovation or issue, just like the one you're about to listen to. Enjoy. Hey everyone, this is Dean. Today, our episode, we'll be talking to Mark Wolf from AHV Communities that is going to kick off our Build for Rent extravaganza. It's going to be part one of 3 consecutive Build for Rent oriented podcast episodes. Today, Mark's going to talk mainly from an operational perspective, but the next couple we'll talk a little bit more about from a financial perspective, about a financing perspective. So I'm looking forward to it. Hope you guys are as well. Here is the first with Mark Wolf. Enjoy. Welcome to New Home Insights, the John Burns Real Estate Consulting podcast about the U.S. housing market. I'm your host, Dean Worley. So regular listeners to this podcast are going to already know that we're kind of, we like the BFR, the Build for Rent or BFR space. We're interested in it. We've covered it before, but it's kind of changed. Initially, 3 years ago or so, we were talking about what kind of legs does it have? Is it going to last? Is it going to be permanent? Now we're talking about that's a clear yes. So now we can kind of get into the shape of those legs and how big they are. This is a weird metaphor. Anyway, to help us do that, we have today Mark Wolf. He's the CEO and founder of AHV Communities. They're a major BFR builder and operator in Texas. Mark, say hi to the folks.
Hello, everybody.
Let's start real quick before we get into the meat. Tell us just a little bit about your background and then about AHV.
Sure. Well, great to be on the show. I appreciate it. I do listen regularly, so I'm thrilled to be a part of it. I started my career in 1995 doing credit risk management at a bank holding company in South Florida. So I've been a long-time real estate capital markets professional. Done billions of dollars of value add participating mortgages, debt and equity raisings, mostly for apartments. And so post downturn, after doing a stint in mortgage banking, kind of started an apartment acquisition company looking to do value add multifamily projects throughout the Southwest. In doing so, I kind of stumbled across the up and coming the aggregation model of the post economic meltdown that, the Invitation Homes, previously Blackstone, American Homes for Rent, Starwood Colony were all very big players in aggregating these huge portfolios of dislocated assets. We saw an opportunity to approach it a little differently, and that's when AHV, at least the concept of AHV, was started. We kind of thought about managing, maintaining, amenitizing, new build communities, much like an apartment, of single family homes. And so that was the Build for Rent model that we intended to start back in 2013. We had basically pitched the idea to a dozen management companies, tons of equity, and nobody believed in it. Everyone said we were crazy. 9 years later, it looks like we were spot on. So it's kind of exciting, but it's been a painful, long, drawn-out road. But it's good to be vindicated here. 9 years later. We do operate in multiple states. We are in Washington State. We're in California. We're in Colorado, Texas, and we are just now breaking into the Tennessee markets. So we've expanded and grown tremendously in the last 24 months, but most of that, as is the space has really blown up in the last 12.
Yeah. A lot of people didn't believe early on, right? So I'm not surprised to hear that, but it's like, as I said at the top of the show, it's been proven out here. So let's start with what AHV focus on. We're going to talk about product first. So for you specifically at AHV, do you focus more on, I think, what you call the luxury BFR product? Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. We consider ourselves, the Mercedes-Benz of the business. We're a Class A multifamily equivalent, high touch points, full amenity packages, management and maintenance on site. So you have to have a premium product to make that work in locations that we at least chase.
Is that how you define it? You kind of touched on it there. How do you define this luxury product? Is it because you have on-site? Is it anything to do with the product? What are the definition of a luxury BFR community?
Yeah, it comes down to service. We have exceptional locations, and those locations are pretty pricey from a land perspective. So you have to build a nice product. and it attracts, a very strong working class family and up. We have a full amenity package, and typically that's, adds a premium to your rent to build it and to operate it. And then we have management that's on site along with maintenance. So again, you have a lot of payroll. And so, it does warrant a higher end product.
Let's step back a little bit. I'm going to ask you to offer your opinions on a little on product within the BFR space a little more holistically. So I think traditionally there's something like three kind of core product types with BFR. Tell me if you agree. There's sort of the horizontal apartments, very much like even in terms of size, very much like traditional apartment projects. It's just no one's above or below you. There's kind of the small lot, very dense, but they have their own garages, let's say, kind of a middle category. And then there's more you do, more traditional detached homes within a purpose-built, built-for-rent community. How does that sound right to you?
It's really spot on, Dean. We look at the horizontal multis as really an extension of multifamily. And that's not to say that they're not a part of the conversation. They absolutely are. The product that's done today is phenomenal. They do a great job amenitizing and laying them out and designing, cute product. I wouldn't go as far as calling them a single family home necessarily. The Lennars of the world and Hortons and KBs that build traditional single family homes would probably say the same thing. Then you have your attached product, which is duplex, townhome, which has, been around forever. People have been, living in one side of a duplex and renting out the other for 60, 70 years since probably, the beginning of the post World War II evolution of housing. And then townhomes, brownstones, those have been around forever as well as part of the built, the rental class. So we don't really call that built for rent. An apartment's always been built for rent. So the vernacular is a little bit, kind of morphed a little bit, and everything is slapped with the BFR kind of moniker. We look at it, and we've been doing this probably longer than anybody in terms of a true built for rent, single family, new build home. We look at that as a 3, 4 bedroom, 5 bedroom home that's, got its own lot. And it could be a small lot, but certainly its own lot, 90 deep, 120 deep by 45, 50 foot wide, traditional lot.
Do you see any of those? Let's stick with those kind of three broad categories. What do you think the future is in terms of what comes to dominate? Do you see more of one or the other coming in the near future, or?
Well, I can tell you it's certainly getting harder and harder to do true single family detached built for rent. That is something that we started out doing. We've been very fortunate that our portfolio, has a lot of infill locations, but those are becoming more and more challenging to find. We'll be announcing a bunch of new acquisitions and developments coming this year that are, holes in the donut in very good locations. It'll be true single family detached. But, even we have kind of morphed a little bit into doing some duplexes to make these infill locations work, to pencil, and even townhomes. We got into the townhome business recently because we've had some exceptional locations that warranted our involvement. But, maybe 4 years ago when capital wasn't as prevalent, that we would have maybe passed on. So, our brand is actually, branched out a little bit as well. We're not just doing single family detached homes anymore.
Okay. This question might sound a little odd, but I'm going to ask you about the importance of product. And it seems like product and getting the product right for your renter is really obvious. That's a necessity. But you'll hear sometimes in the sector of almost like the BFR units are just widgets, and demand is so strong that product really doesn't matter. You're going to find a tenant. For you, is really designing the right product for your intended target market critical, important, not important?
That is a great question. For us, we have a long-term hold mentality. Now, whether we sell it in 3 or 5 years is a whole nother story, but our hold period right now with our capital is, 10 to 20 years. And so when you have that mentality, you build a different product, you design a different product. So for us, product is paramount. I think first off, location, and second, what product. That product to us, is inclusive of an amenity management maintenance package. Can we amenitize, manage, and maintain it? At what scale can we do it? What product do we design? These are designed to be true functioning communities for the duration. We're not building a trade. We're not building a flip. We care about the quality inside and outside. We care about the design and flow of the community, as well as the house and the efficiency to live in that house and maintain it and operate it over a long period of time.
Yeah.
So, a lot of folks, to your point, I think they're building a trade. There's a lot of activity. There's a ton of money pouring in the space, starved for product. And I think a lot of people are going to make a lot of money initially on that. But, with that comes long-term ramifications that we'll have to see how it plays out.
I think exactly right. And in a couple of minutes, I'm going to ask you about categorization, about segmentation, the class A, B, C. I'll ask that in a few minutes.
Sure.
But it strikes me that the folks who are looking at BFR as these widgets and these short-term plays, they're making future class C BFR communities, I think.
You said it, not me.
I'll get in trouble for that. So is a product for you, when you design it, is it market specific? Do you change it from market to market, or is it very household type or demographic specific?
Demographics do play a part of it. We come into a market and from a macro perspective, we look at it and we start drilling down to the micro market, the locational attribute of that particular project. And, it might warrant 3 and 4 bedroom homes. It might warrant a duplex that has some 2 bedroom, product stratification in it. But design and touch point functionality kind of carries market to market. We are trying to build a forward-thinking, thoughtful interior living space. And that should translate from market to market, need to need. Okay. Where we differ a lot is basically our amenity package and exterior design elements. And we definitely try to come in and be appropriate and applicable to a market that we're in. So, for instance, San Antonio has a much different touch and feel than a Houston. And a Colorado and a Tennessee. And so while we might use very similar or exactly the same product, it'll look an awful lot different in each of those markets.
So how many gun racks you put on the living room wall, something like that?
Yes, correct. Antlers.
Yeah, it's been pre-game hunting trophies in the den. How about unit sizes, bedroom counts? Is there a sweet spot right now for a BFR that's generalizable?
Yeah, I think with the household millennial formation, with young working professionals, 3 bedroom is really a sweet spot. It's got an extra bedroom for an office, and then if they do have an addition to the family at some point, that can be the 3rd bedroom. But space is a premium today, as you know, and I don't think that's going to wane. I think it's here to stay. But we like the 2 bedroom when we're doing attached product because it opens up the bell curve to a larger group of people that we normally don't talk to or cater to. The 3 and 4 bedroom, which we traditionally have focused on, has been the bulk of what we do. It still remains the bulk of what we do. But when we do attached product, we offer a dual master 2 bedroom for the roommate situation.
Okay. Is bedroom count in your mind kind of that key advantage for BFR versus traditional apartments? Is that where the demand sort of shifts to in favor of you when you get to the higher bedroom count?
Well, I think it's a big differentiator. For decades, municipalities frowned upon, any 3 bedroom unit counts in apartments. I think traditionally 92 or 93% of all multifamily units were, studios 1s and 2s, and 3 bedrooms made up, 7 to 10% of the unit count. It's been a very small number nationwide. Yeah. And that was a lot due to parking and traffic impacts. Now you're seeing that kind of catch up and say, well, there's this huge society that wants to live in rentals. And so naturally the first jump is going to be to a house that has that extra bedroom or 2. Yeah. And so I just think, there's an efficiency and there's a municipality, movement that has forced apartments to be something that they may have otherwise not done. They may have gravitated to 3 bedroom units over time as things changed, but they really weren't able to because of legislation or your local, zoning. So it's interesting. I think that this is a big growing sector. It's the 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom horizontal multi projects are perfect for that, apartment correlation. What we do is really the growing family.
See, but that brings up the horizontal apartments bring up the advantage that they have over apartments, which is the Correct. Other big advantage, which is no one above or below you. Is that also Correct. Critical for you folks?
Well, we don't look at it that much because we're really not focused on 1s and 2s. We really like the, true single family nature of having a direct access 2-car garage, a true front yard, backyard, side yard. What you see in a lot of the horizontal multis is extremely small yards. It might be 8 feet by 20 feet. So it's not really a functional backyard. They typically don't have garages embedded in the units. Yeah. So they're definitely a good product. I'm not, besmirching any of those projects. there's a fundamental difference in what they're accomplishing. I think a lot of these guys pull it off pretty well, but it's a very different product.
Yeah, it is. Let's switch over now to amenities and how critical, what they are, what they should be, and how critical they are. There is also some disagreement, but I think more rational here than it is about product. There's disagreement about how critical amenities are to a successful BFR community. How, for you, how critical is it to have an amenitized community in your space?
Yeah, paramount importance. I think that we have always valued the amenities management and maintenance of our communities at the highest level. We believe that we are an apartment company masquerading as a home builder. That's how I've always defined AHV. Our product happens to be single family homes, but our operations and our approach to the business is extremely multifamily-esque.
Okay.
And so we've always put a lot of value in having eyes and ears every day on site. And so if you're coming out of an apartment and you look at the demographics of apartment dwellers, if they're in good locations, they're typically high incomes. Well, we always looked at that and said, well, people could easily come and rent a house for a similar price or more with a garage and with a yard. But would they do that if they didn't really have the familiarity and comfort of the management, the maintenance, and the amenity package? What makes apartments great is a sense of community, and it kind of starts with this, wow factor when you come into the community. You see this beautiful clubhouse. You have management and maintenance on staff if anything ever goes wrong. And then you have a pool and a fitness center and a dog park. These are great things. This is a country club environment when you add houses to it. So we get the top dollar rents in marketplaces purely because we are providing a level of service that other people don't value. And that's okay. There's a differentiator between us and most others. But we put that at the absolute highest level.
You are feeding perfectly into my segues, by the way, Mark, because my next question was, are amenities most critical for pricing, or are they critical also for absorption and retention, I guess, too?
Yeah, I think they go hand in hand. I mean, if done properly, you're integrating everything and you're building a sense of community. Our Pradera project, 250 units, virtually 100% occupied with a waiting list. Our management team does a phenomenal job of creating, community events on a monthly basis and holidays. And when you drive into, Halloween at our community versus, other communities, you have the clubhouses decorated, you have, a pumpkin carving contest, you have kids running around. It's a different environment when you have a nice amenity that centers the social aspect of a community. I think it drives rents, it drives retention, and it definitely helps with absorption.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any community size where you kind of have to have amenities, or even vice versa, where you would think about not having amenities because of the size of that community?
Yeah, so we only have 2 projects in our portfolio that won't and don't have amenities. Both are under construction at present. They're both, unique positions. The one's in a very infill location in Austin that's only 65 units. We just don't have the land mass. It was one of those deals where we bought it fully approved, and we said, this is a deal that we have to do. We're extremely familiar with the location, and we're going to, that'll be remotely managed. I wouldn't say that we would do that, 9 out of 10 more times, but it was an opportunity that we said, look, it doesn't have to have an amenity. We would prefer to amenitize and manage, but it doesn't mean it's a bad deal. It's just a different deal. Our other projects is in a very, unique area up in Washington State, outside of Redmond and Bellevue, Washington, called Duval. And it's 99 units, and it's right on the Snoqualmie River Trail, and it's got some outdoor, exercise equipment and a beautiful, quaint part of the village. And it just doesn't have the ability to manage or maintain on site either. But it's not large. These are 65 and 99 units. We have amenitized and managed on site as small as 82 and upwards of 250. We will always seek to manage, maintain, and amenitize. It doesn't always work, especially when you're inheriting someone else's vision, which is why we typically design things from the ground up ourselves. But these particular deals were way far down the road in terms of approvals, practically shovel ready or finished lots. And so we kind of had what we had. But I'd say that we always look to insert that component into our designs.
Are there one or two just absolutely critical must-have amenities, like traditional clubhouse or pool, or is it something a little more funky?
Yeah, I mean, as we move into other markets like Nashville, for example, the pool is probably less of a need due to the short season of pool time. In a place like Texas, it's important, but not end of the world. California, absolutely have to have it. So Colorado, we're going to have a pool, but probably not as high up on the list of must-haves. We can actually design it in. So we'll design it. We'll always go to the extent of providing it because we believe it's a holistic value proposition to our prospective tenants. But it doesn't mean we will always have it. But to date, we've pretty much amenitized, managed, and maintained in the very same capacity I outlined: pool, fitness center, dog park, every community we've had except the two.
Let's switch over now to premium. So what I mean by that is not sort of that unit specific conditional kind of premium, but actually premiums that BFR is able to gain over other housing types. So in terms of, like to like, I know that's a tough question, but like to like, you had the same community amenitized versus the same community non-amenitized. What do you think is the price premium for that amenitized community versus the non?
I think today you'd probably say very little just due to the lack of availability and alternatives. So today is, not the norm. If we can agree to that, I think it's a several $100 premium.
Okay.
We have experience with this. We know a little bit about what we're seeing in the marketplace versus what we offer. And we're typically a couple $100 more per month. Today that has narrowed a little bit, and anyone will pay anything for a house for sale or a house for rent, it seems.
Yeah.
We're in that kind of supply crazy, what do you want to call it? Twilight zone right now.
Yeah.
But when the things normalize, it's a couple $100.
Couple $100 for your rents. What does that translate into roughly as a percent? Are you talking upper single digits or?
Yeah, 7-10%.
Okay, so that's so pretty good, a pretty sizable premium when things are more normalized. How about the premium, if you can conceive it this way, separately for that services and maintenance? In other words, that kind of thing that apartment complexes offer. So you have this well maintained and you have the services of your BFR community versus, say, a mom and pop SFR. Is that another separate critical premium versus the SFR?
Absolutely. That's part of the driving factor is people don't want to, wait or call a helpline to ultimately have someone else call someone else to come out and take care of a problem. Having eyes and ears on site every day is helpful. It allows us to build a relationship with our tenant base. They see the maintenance folks. They know them by name. Hopefully they don't have many problems, but if they do, hey, Jim, can you come, I have a leak in my faucet, or the light bulb went out, or I need a filter for my air conditioning. Those are really nice things to have. It also builds a sense of community. Our management team and our maintenance team know virtually everybody on site. They see them every day.
Would you do offsite leasing or maintenance? Do you do that anywhere, or would you?
We have two communities, as I mentioned, that are smaller. So those will be remotely. I mean, we're basically leasing out of the makeshift office in the garage of one of the units. But as we approach, 100% occupancy, which we expect to at some point, that will go away. We'll lease that unit out. That'll be the last unit to be leased, and then it'll be a third-party remote management setup. That's never an objective of ours.
Okay. Overall, you aggregate all these, whether it's amenities, services management. I know it's another brutal question. I apologize, but I still need an answer, Mark. What is that overarching premium for an amenitized, serviced BFR community versus that single family home mom and pop rental?
I mean, it could be upwards of 15%, but I'd say it's probably 10 to 15%.
Do you think it'll be a little more when the market is a little more normal? Closer to that 15 than the 10?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I mean, we've seen plenty of examples in our underwriting or comps that we pull for our projects. Could be $400 or $500 deltas between our rents and the competing, aggregated or mom and pop.
Yeah. I've seen it, by the way, just FYI, I've seen it even higher than 15%. We've seen some huge deltas. And it varies all over the place, but yeah, it could get pretty extreme.
Yeah, I mean, we look at apartments, and you see 3-bedroom apartments or even 2-bedroom apartments that are more than what these one-offs are getting as a single-family standalone home, and that's proof positive that maintenance, management, and amenities do drive what people, look, whether they use it or not, doesn't matter. It checks the box from where they're conditioned their entire, college and professional career, early, 20s and late 20s. They've always been in apartments typically, and they're used to that level of service. I think that carries forward as they come into, the big boy, big girl house, and they're going to want that.
Let's switch over now to renter types.
Sure.
How do they differ? How do your renters differ from those apartment renters in the area, demographically, income, things like that, or even from SFR folks in the same area? Are there differences you see in terms of demographics or household type or income, anything like that at all?
We've seen some, interesting, multi-generational households where, you might have, we have a phenomenal tenant in one of our communities. The two girls live with their dad, who's a war vet. He's got some disabilities, and they've been now with us for 3 years. They keep renewing. And, that's something I don't think you'd see in a traditional apartment. But we have very high demographics. I mean, these are 6-figure household incomes plus. Most everybody could afford to go out and buy a house. Their credit scores generally tend to be extremely high. So, that's the biggest light bulb moment that I think everyone's realizing today is that, there are people that just don't care to own a home.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, we hear that a lot, by the way. Again, it's amazing that people, I think a lot of people don't believe that still, but we hear a lot that essentially if you have your BFR community and right next door is a normal for sale community and otherwise there's similar product pricing, whatever, demographically, those BFR renters are virtually indistinguishable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you get, because BFR really it has that bedroom count factor over apartments. Do you think families is another differentiator?
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. I think families is probably the single largest differentiator. To raise a child other than a need base in an apartment is unfortunate. Doesn't mean it's, makes them a bad person, but I think everybody would strive to have a traditional house to raise a family. I have plenty of friends that grew up in New York City that lived in apartment buildings, and it's just a different lifestyle. But suburban America, I think generally speaking, you'd prefer to have your child in a neighborhood, in a traditional home. But needs based, I'm sure that's, varies all over the country. But I think that's everyone strives to provide their child that.
But you're still getting, the dual income, no kids, professional couples, the retirees, empty nesters. You're still getting those folks?
100%. It's, a third, I'd say it's a third, right? It's a third of the household millennium, formation. It's a third empty nesters and everyone else in between,
What do you think are the primary motivations for going to BFR rather than for sale? We hear a lot of down payment, mobility, whatever, testing a neighborhood. For you, what do you see as those? Why are they in the BFR, renting a BFR rather than in the for sale world?
I think it's really the load of a house. The down payment. If you're a first time home buyer and you're buying a house, the $250 to $350 range. There's a ton of financial engineering that can occur out there with unique loans and all kinds of things to go ahead and get a low down payment on that house. Maybe it's twice as much as a security deposit on a built for rent. But it's really that long-term unknown of, am I going to be here long enough? Do I want to be here all this time? Do I want to take care of the house, to maintain it? You have taxes and insurance. And so while the payment might be attractive, you still have tax load, insurance load, maintenance, and all kinds of other things that come with homeownership that I think many of the younger folks are learning this, and so they choose not to do it. Plus, it's a very mobile society, so they want to lock and leave, go have fun, experience life. Some of the older folks transitioning down from homes and saying, I'm sick of that house. I had it for 30 years, and I'm so glad to get rid of it. I just want to lock my door and leave. Sounds a lot like the millennials, right?
Yeah.
And then the folks in between are maybe transitioning or have gotten burned in the past with homeownership. You never know. I think it's a whole variety of things. I just think that today's society is lock and leave mentality, less weighing you down with obligations, especially financially, is here to stay.
Yeah, that low maintenance lifestyle, I think that gets overlooked in terms of BFR demand and motivation.
Absolutely.
How about markets? Let's switch over to markets now as a topic. What do you see or want to see in a market to want to be there? Is it jobs? Is it population growth? Do you look at metrics for when you're judging and assessing markets?
Yeah, jobs, jobs, jobs. I mean, it's first and foremost. Then, taxes, population growth, which usually go hand in hand, right? Jobs, population growth kind of follow low tax environments. I think that's proven today, statistically speaking. But we start at a very broad macro level. We study it. Then we drill down from there as to where in those markets we want to be. So, the markets we're in right now, Seattle Metro, Inland Empire, California, all four majors here in Texas. We're in the Denver Metro and Colorado Springs, and we're in Nashville. So you look at all those markets, they're all top tier for growth right now. If you pulled up a map where the hotspots for growth are, Inland Empire is the only one you head scratch, but it's our backyard. We still have a huge presence, even though I moved to San Antonio, Texas to kind of grow the company. We still have a huge presence in Southern California. And so we have two big projects out there.
Yeah. Well, the 909, that's the Inland Empire.
Yeah.
Sorry, for the non-Californians. That's still a pretty, I mean, it's traditionally been a pretty high growth area.
It is very high growth. And it's a head scratcher because all the craziness in California right now, it still seems to be a very hot spot for growth. So we're very happy being there. The biggest challenge or the biggest unknown for California is, regulatory. That's the unknown. It's not a fact of do I want to do business there? It's what could happen down the road during my ownership cycle.
Okay. How about in terms of city responses? We're starting to hear, I've even heard anecdotally, some cities are doing like moratoriums on BFR, or other cities are looking at it kind of with leeriness. Are you finding that? Are you finding hesitancy?
Yeah, I think there's some players out there, and I don't want to call them bad actors by any means. I mean, everyone's doing their thing, and one person's, Picasso is another person's mess. But I think the cities are seeing some product, and they're experiencing some folks that maybe aren't executing to the level that they'd like to see. We're always concerned about our neighbors in a for sale neighborhood because we have eyes and ears every day on site. We're building a $100 million community. We're not building a $200,000 house. So we argue that, we're more concerned about you next door to us not keeping your house in good shape. But there are some groups that don't manage and maintain on site, that don't have eyes and ears on there every day. And so technically, I understand the city's questions of, will this be a property that's kept up? Who's going to take care of it? So we hear that a lot from the cities and municipalities. It's fairly unconstitutional in a lot of markets to do that from a state perspective. I'm not talking about United States Constitution, but from a land rights or a land use type of constitutional, the rights are infringed upon when a city says you have to do rentals. No, most developers don't want to fight back, and I understand that reason as well. But we're finding a lot of markets that we're talking to folks, and when we do run into that, we're trying to politely remind people that they're overstepping their bounds. If we get a little bit of resistance, we move on. It's just not worth the fight. You mean
they want you to do for sale, not rental?
Yeah, they want for sale. We try to remind them, look, we're going to be one of your largest taxpayers here. What's it matter to you? We try to prove that we do it differently than everybody else. Here's examples of our product. Here's what it looks like. Here are some people that live here that, hear their commentary on it. But it's a challenge. We hear it a lot in a lot of the municipalities that we go to.
Is there still kind of a stigma in favor of for sale or rent? In other words, renters are sometimes looked at with a little bit of a stigma. Is that still true?
It's shocking, yes, and mostly from the municipalities and these councils that frankly it's just ignorance. It's just not understanding and knowing what they're talking about. So we try to politely educate people on the granularity of understanding who our residents are versus a for sale person. You might not know anything about that person. They come with a suitcase full of cash. That's that.
Yeah, we actually have. You never know.
Yeah, we have actual information on every one of our tenants, so we actually have more control than a regular neighborhood does. But it falls on deaf ears oftentimes. They have their own.
Yeah, although I shouldn't knock on grow houses. That's a sizable part of the market too. How about I'm just have a kind of little grab bag of things I'm interested in is location. It sounds like location is critical to you in micro aspects of location. Are you looking for, like, apartments would look for visibility, being by a freeway or a major thoroughfare? Are you kind of almost the opposite because you don't need, except for the initial absorption period, that's not as important to you, and be more in a suburban environment?
I'll tell you, the aggregators when they first started, the big boys back in 09, 10, 11, and they proved that you don't have to be visible, right? Because all their product is needle in the haystack. I mean, they're invisible to most people. You get online, you look around, you surf the internet, and you find your product. So technology has been an incredible, differentiator or in the market today versus how we used to do things. We still put location at the absolute top of the list in terms of deciding on a deal. To me, real estate is fundamental, and location are the three principles of real estate. Everything else comes in fourth, fifth, and otherwise. So location to us is extremely important. I think you've seen an erosion of fundamentals in real estate choices, as we mentioned, you talked about earlier. Those are tomorrow's, C assets. We don't necessarily want to be on the freeway, but we want to be near it. So, we have a couple locations that are freeway proximal. So we won't shy away from that. We have a brand new site that's on the 35 and 1604 here in San Antonio, which is Main and Main. A couple hundred yards off the freeway. So we do have a good buffer, but, it's an infill location, phenomenal visibility. That's probably, 20% of our portfolio. Most of it is neighborhood driven and, a few minutes off the main track.
Okay. So let's talk about the future. Let's look at your crystal ball a little bit as we wrap up. So do you see the BFR world sort of segmenting and diversifying? I mean, have we not seen the end of, say, the product type or the how we rent them and how we market them? Is something else coming up?
Yeah, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. I don't know what else could come up. I mean, I think that it's pretty spoken for. There's a variety of product that's utilizing the build for rent moniker. I think you'll continue to see it evolve. I think the newest part of that equation isn't the horizontal multi. It's really what we've done initially, which is the single family detached residential neighborhoods. I think it's here to stay. I said it back in 2014 in an interview. And I always said it would be a multifamily, part of the multifamily conversation. I'm glad to see it part of that. I'm a big fan of multifamily from an operational efficiency perspective. We're going to stay true to those roots. I don't know about everybody else, but I think it's an operational advantage that will carry forward with us. I think other people will see that in due time, but for the time being, the market's hot. There's $100 billion of product, of demand out there from capital. So I think for a while here, we're going to see a lot of the same, and the market will sort itself out over time.
Do you see it segmenting into that class A, B, C kind of system that traditional apartments have?
I think it will. I think it will. I'd like to see it really differentiate into real product class. You have your horizontal multi, and I think that's exactly what it is. And I think you have your attached, brownstone townhome, duplex product, which is its own product class. And we participate in that, by the way. But I also think that the build for rent, the single family, should be truly defined as single family. It's unique, it's different, it's new, and I think it's special.
Do you see the players in this space changing?
Yeah, I do. I think it'll thin out a little bit. There's some well-backed groups, from a capital perspective that'll be here for, the future. I think some of the big names have figured out how to get in the space. We pitched in 14, 15, and 16 that said no thank you are all now doing it.
Yeah.
So, no surprise. We have a long-term plan in place with a single capital partner we're very excited about. I would never say never, but I don't think we'll ever sell or merge with anybody else. I know there's some other groups out there that probably feel the same way.
Are you kind of anticipating my next question again? So do you think we'll see consolidation in this sector?
I think you will. I think you'll see some people have trouble competing on a broad basis that will, not say throw their hands up, but come across an attractive opportunity to join forces with another group. We're building a national platform. It's always been an objective of AHV's to be coast to coast. We're well on our way, being, Seattle, California through, the South into the East. I think other folks will probably, merge in with other folks to kind of create that larger footprint with scale.
Do you see there more consolidation in terms of the actor type? Let me explain that. So right now, let's call it an institutional actor in the single family world, the overarching single family, inclusive of BFR, is very small. It depends on how you define it, but it might be 3%, it might be 8% of the market. The vast bulk of this market is literally mom and pops with just a handful or one property. Do you see that rising, exponentially or just very, very gradually over the, say, next 5-10 years?
I think it'll grow due to new builds more than gobbling up the little person. I mean, think about the daunting task of buying, 2s and 3s at a time from individual people versus, bank tapes, right? We can go in and buy 10,000 houses from a bank, right? That's a different approach than going and buying individual one-offs from people who probably are reluctant to sell in the first place. So I think people will grow that way, but it's a very slow, very labor intensive way to grow. I think that building it new is going to be a big part of the future, which, we proved out and shows by everyone else now doing the new builds. But growing that way is going to be really tough. I'm not to say it won't happen that way, but could you imagine trying to gobble up 10 million houses one at a time?
Yeah. When the big actors, like you mentioned earlier, Blackstone, et cetera, when they were building, there was still a lot of that distressed inventory out there and things like that. That's just not true anymore. So maybe the next time that happens, there'll be an opportunity, but
for sure. I think that's when the opportunities come, when bad things are out there, that's when the biggest opportunities are. But it's also the hardest time to act if you don't have capital.
Yeah. And I want to ask this question, even though I think you already answered it earlier, is that don't you think that BFR communities have more vested interest in maintaining the appeal and the attractiveness of their community than next door cheek by jowl for sale communities because of your long-term outlook?
Absolutely. I mean, when you take a holistic community, right, and a true cohesive, contiguous nature like we do and some other folks do, when you have those 100 to 200 houses that are, continuous in lawn and yard and infrastructure, that's a large investment, right? That's 50, 60, 80 million dollar investment. That takes real capital. That typically comes from a third party source. It requires a very high level of upkeep and maintenance and reporting. You can't let that community go by the wayside. In a for sale neighborhood, and I'm not picking on anybody, but you go to a for sale neighborhood, a new community, Lennar, Horton, any of these big, master plan guys that are building, 1,000 houses. As you move through the community, it ages over time. And when they sell their last house, they're no longer controlling the HOA. It goes to a third party HOA in some remote location that their only power is really a letter. And that letter is delayed by 30 days at a time. So if someone wants to let their house go to crap, not cut their lawn, park in, somewhere they're not supposed to park, your enforcement is really minimal at that point. So I think that, I'm more concerned, as I alluded to earlier, of my neighbor than of myself, because I'm worried that as soon as the builder's out of that community, then that's the decline of that community. It's tomorrow's slum. And I'm painting a very broad brush, but we've all driven by communities that are 5, 6, 7 years old. And we know it's 5, 6, 7 years old, but it looks 20 years old. Fences are falling down. Things aren't stained. Things just don't look great. And that's, to your point, when you have these big communities with large investments, I think they're going to be taken care of a lot better.
Yeah. I know that seems like a puffball question, but I wanted to answer that because I think that gets overlooked a lot when folks are assessing BFR. It really
I try to tell people that we're not making a $250,000 bet in your market. We're making a $50 million, an $80 million bet. That's a substantial investment.
Yeah. And let's end with this, Mark. In the battle of the acronyms, who's going to win? Is it BFR, BTR, Build to Rent, or B numeral 4R, which is kind of clever? What do you think?
Well, Built to Rent is interesting. BTR and BFR are fairly, saying pretty much the same thing. Then you have Build or Built. It's all been so silly. I kind of started the frame. I told John a long time ago, I was pitching a municipality. This is back in 2015 on what we were doing. And they were complaining about how they were worried about the inventory for, which is still pervasive today when you talk to folks. But the inventory that I was building was not going to go to a home buyer, but it was going to go to rent. And that bothered them because I'm denying homeowners of the opportunity to buy a house in their neighborhood. And I said, well, you have to understand something. This was never built for sale. This is going to be built for rent. And then that was 2015. I was pitching my Pflugerville deal up in North Austin to the council. And they go, oh, they understood that, right? It was never intended to be a part of the for sale conversation. So I was not robbing or denying anybody of home ownership. It was never intended for that. It was always going to be built for rent. And so now that's been used to define everything, which is shocking that they define apartments as built for rent, because I don't know when an apartment hasn't been built for rent. So I don't really have a comment. I think it's going to be a morphing of all that stuff, and whoever can use the acronym to be relevant in the conversation are exciting.
That was a very good. Are you running for office? That was a very good non-answer answer. I like that.
Not yet.
BTR. Okay, I honestly don't know. We use BFR, but we hear BTR all the time. So we'll see.
I think it's built for rent. I think it's BFR. Yeah. I really do. We registered the trademark, so we're working on the timing for that.
Okay, cool. Hey, Mark. Thank you. I really appreciate you coming on. This has been great. I got all these questions. This is probably the most questions I've ever asked in a podcast. So thank you so much for helping out.
It was a pleasure. I had a lot of fun.
Right on. All right. Thanks everyone for listening. This is Dean Worley with the New Home Insights podcast. We'll see you next time.